what's going on? Welcome to the Dad Edge podcast. I'm Larry Hagner, your host and founder of this show. I'm excited about today's show because it's all about building resilience by doing weird and wonderful things. So are you confused yet? That's okay. Don't worry, you won't be for long because my guest today is best-selling author Ben Aldridge, who's written an incredible book called How to Be Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable, 43 Weird and Wonderful Ways to Build a Strong, Resilient Mindset. Ben writes about practical philosophy, comfort zones, mental health, and adventure. And his book is an exploration of unique ways to leave our comfort zones, face our fears, overcome our anxieties, heavily influenced by Stoicism, Buddhism, popular psychology, and CBT. Ben challenges us to get uncomfortable and experience personal growth that we can only gain by pushing our personal limits. So today, what he's going to talk about is, number one, his approach to dealing with severe and debilitating anxiety. He's keen to share his experiences with panic attacks and all kinds of stigmas that surround mental health. He's also going to share challenges that he has completed in order to build mental resilience. He's also going to share philosophies and ideas that have helped him complete these challenges. And if you guys have not picked up this book yet, it's so entertaining. It's so entertaining. Honestly, you guys will absolutely love it. I know without a shadow of a doubt that pushing ourselves to do things that are uncomfortable for us absolutely builds resilience. It builds that toughness. And as David Goggins would say, it's like putting a cookie in the cookie jar for mental toughness. Every time we do something that's a little bit outside of our comfort zone, it's like putting a cookie in the cookie jar. Yep, I did that. Yes, I am tougher. I am stronger. I've challenged myself. It's all good stuff. All right, so no more talk from me. Here is my interview with the one, the only Ben Aldridge. Ben, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Dad Edge podcast, my friend.
Hey, Larry. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. I always joke around with you guys from the UK. Like, I'm always like, man, I could hear you guys read the weather. Like, you guys got the cool accents going on. So, and I know it's not an accent for you. In fact, us Americans, we probably sound like a bunch of morons over here.
No, don't be ridiculous.
Man, I'm excited to talk to you. I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm a big fan of getting outside our comfort zone. I know a lot of our guys who listen to this show, they don't like comfort zones. You know, we like to live life legendary. We like to live with intention and purpose, and we certainly don't like being comfortable. So, and that's exactly what you're. Yeah, that's exactly what your book is about. We're going to get into all that, but before we do that, what was it like growing up for you? Like, what was your family like, and maybe the relationship with your own father?
Yeah, I had a really strong relationship, and he's still around. He's kind of like a mentor. I actually talk about him in the book as well. There's been some interesting things that he's taught me across the years, and actually, it's been really nice to see how he deals with things in life. And because he's certainly had some challenges. And I feel that through this whole project this basically came about as a response to my own anxiety. So seeing how he's dealt with things in his life has been fascinating, and it's been great to have a role model like that. So yeah, it's always been great, a great relationship.
That's awesome, man. And did you grow up with siblings?
No, it's just me, only child.
Just you.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So tell me what your dad's personality is like, as far as, I mean, sounds like you guys get along great.
Yeah. So Dad he's an actor, a writer, a director. He's done so many different things. When I was little, he was doing more acting, and as he's got older and as I've grown up, he's got more into the directing as well, directing plays. So he spent a lot of time in the West End in central London on the stage, doing a lot of lead roles. And when I was a kid, I was always going backstage and getting exposure to all of these different shows. And it was a very nice environment to grow up in. And he's always been very encouraging of creativity and pushing me to do things that I really want to do. So that's been a great role model, I think.
That's really cool. What about your mom?
So she used to be a ballet dancer, and they actually met on stage. She was an actress as well. That's where they met. So that's lovely. And now she's into antiques. She's an antique dealer.
Wow.
So she goes around to all of these little, well, not, I say little, they're these fairs all over the country. So she sells loads of different things. Kitchenalia is what she specializes in. Ancient kitchen utensils.
Ancient kitchen utensils. So like, did they, back in the day, like in these ancient, utensils, were they like, instead of like a butter knife, did you get like a machete, to cut your bread?
Yeah, there's all of these things on her store that people will go around and they won't know what they are. And there will be these things that they used in the Victorian ages. And so you'd have these copper jelly molds and loads of things. So when people go to her stand, they're always fiddling around with things, which I think winds her up quite a bit. But a lot of movie scouts come and they really love a lot of the stuff that she sells. It's very relevant if you're filming a period drama. A lot of the stuff that she has on her stall is so relevant for that.
There you go. I like it. And are they still married?
Yeah, still together.
How many years have they been married?
Well, a long time. We've got to say maybe over 30 years.
And
no, way longer than that. What am I talking about? Sorry, Larry.
Yeah.
I don't actually know how long they've been married. It must be 35, 40 years. They've been together for a long time. The whole time I've been alive.
That's awesome, man. What have you learned just by watching them operate? What have you learned about marriage and relationships?
I've learned a lot of things, and it's difficult to kind of put it all into one. I think it's just through osmosis, just growing up in a very stable environment. It just kind of it rubs off. There's a lot of respect between the two of them, and I think that's something that's really important, and that's something that I think I've picked up from them, especially in the long term as well. They're kind to each other, and that's key. I think kindness is key.
Kindness is key. My wife and I, we've been together for 24 years, been married for 17. And my kids, my goal is to gross out my children at least once a day. Cause man, I love their mom. And she loves me. And, like I'm always, when I want to compliment my wife, like I'll do it outspokenly on purpose in front of them. And I'll be like, I'll look at her and be like, "You're so beautiful. Just love you." And they're like, "Oh, God, Dad, come on." And I'm just like, "Hey, would you rather have the opposite? Would you rather us be fighting? Would you rather live in a house where mom and dad didn't love each other? Like, what would that be like?" And they're like, "Yeah, I can't really imagine that one." So, so tell me, growing up, I mean, only child, you come from this really great child, or from this family. It sounds like, mom and dad are very happy together. Your dad was more creative and into art, and it sounds like your mom was as well. Mm-hmm. Your book, which is fascinating, by the way, How to Be Comfortable Being Uncomfortable, 43 Weird and Wonderful Ways to Build a Strong, Resilient Mindset. So looking back on your childhood, and has this been a book that you're like, I started thinking about things and just sort of experimenting with things and doing different things, or was this just like a switch that went off, a few years back?
This was definitely something that happened from an event. This wasn't something that's been in the pipeline since I was a kid. This is, I think a few years ago, I found myself experiencing severe and debilitating anxiety. And that has really been the start of this whole project. It was at that point that I needed to make a massive change in my life, because everything got a bit overwhelming and I was in a dark place. So this is my response to that. What I talk about is how I changed everything by doing challenges and studying philosophy. And those two things combined are essentially what picked me up out of this really dark place.
You don't come across to me as a guy who suffers from anxiety. Is it just now that you've gone through these challenges and you've evolved that you've been able to maybe control it? Or is it something like, gosh, maybe you're feeling it right now, but you're really, really good at dealing with it and just living life as normal?
It was way worse. And I think everyone has the potential to be anxious, and it's how we deal with it. But what happened is I started to have back-to-back panic attacks, and that's just a very intense experience. You feel like you're dying. If you've never had one before, it's very easy to call an ambulance because you think you're having a heart attack. So when I started experiencing that, I had no tools or tricks, no way of dealing with it. And it was extremely terrifying. But through this process of exploring myself, self-exploration and studying philosophy and ideas and testing myself, I've managed to completely change my relationship with it. So I don't have these intense panic attacks anymore. And if I'm anxious, I've got all these different tools and ideas that I can lean on when things are difficult. So it's been a profound change. And that's why I've written this book, so that I can share this with other people as well and help people who were in a similar place to me, but also people who aren't anxious or they're in a strong place already. There's so much you can do by stepping outside of your comfort zone, and just doing these challenges has unlocked all of that for me. So it's been an amazing journey, I think.
What has been some of the most pleasantly surprising things that came out of the book as far as responses from people who have read it that maybe you didn't expect when you were writing it originally?
I think opening up about mental health issues has been massive, because so many people will actually open up about their issues as well. And you realize that so many people have their own things that they're dealing with. So many people have their own battles. And actually, as soon as you show a bit of vulnerability, then everyone gets involved and they'll open up about their vulnerabilities. And we all have them. And it's amazing when you take that first initiative. So I think a lot of my friends were surprised when they heard about this, that I had really bad anxiety. And actually from that, the conversations around it, and, that's been really amazing experience and journey as well.
So speaking of doing uncomfortable things, was it very uncomfortable for you in the beginning to write a book about being comfortable and being uncomfortable and just being very vulnerable and authentic with your anxiety? Because I can imagine that could cause someone even more anxiety to be like, well, man, if I put this out in the world, like, that's a huge risk.
Yeah, of course. But then I think it's been baby steps. The book wasn't the thing that came first. It was all of these different challenges and different things that I started doing. And then I saw progress, and I felt that there was such a change that actually this idea has value to it. So then that naturally became something I wanted to share. And I started writing, and that's how that was created. But obviously there's vulnerability of being open, and that's kind of this next stage when the book goes out into the world. Of course, there's going to be lots more feedback, but everything that I've been doing on social media, had some amazing feedback from so many people, and the workshops and talks I've done. Again, I get great feedback, and people are very open about their issues as well. So it's been a great journey, and it's all part of it, really. I can't write a book about being uncomfortable and then complain if I get into some interesting situations. So,
oh yeah,
and my friends love that. They take, they're now it's the golden card. They can pull this out whenever. If I don't want to do something, then of course it's like, well, come on, you've written a book about resilience.
Yeah, you wrote a book about it. Yeah, you're publicly accountable now. So
which is good, because you push yourself more. But then my girlfriend loves this as well. She's got this up her sleeve whenever, which is good. I guess it keeps me motivated, doesn't it? So
yeah, I mean, if you ever want to hold yourself to a higher standard, or almost even write your mission in such a way, write a book, right? I remember I wrote The Dad Edge, launched it 5 years ago in 2015. And I remember, and to be honest, like, the book is just outdated at this point. I mean, it's a simple book, it provides a simple template for, better memories, better connection with your kids and your wife, and just really easy things to do, but definitely not as evolved as the brand and the knowledge base is today. But I remember right before I launched that book, I had just tremendous anxiety before I published it officially on Amazon. I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I called a mentor of mine. I was like, what if this sucks? What if nobody reads it? What if no one buys it? What if I get terrible reviews on it? And he was just kind of shaking his head, and he had written 3 books, and he's like, yeah, all that could happen. He's like, but let me ask you 2 questions. If you change one person's life for the good who reads it, just one, was it worth it? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he goes, well, what about you? Being the one that wrote it, are you the same person you were a year ago? But since you put pen to paper, reflection and writing and putting purpose into this book, has it now become something different? And I was like, yeah, it's like a solidified mission of how I'm going to operate. He goes, well, then who cares? Right. And I was like, wow, okay. It's a different way to look at it. Do you, are you nervous in any way about any bad feedback, or, what if it's not as successful as I thought? All these things that publishers fear, before the book comes out.
Well, I completely agree with you. I think it's all about the journey as well. So for me, it's been an amazing experience, and I'm just so happy to be having this book coming out. And it comes with the territory. I think naturally, anything you do, you open yourself up to criticism. There will be people who might not like it, and that's just part and parcel of putting yourself out there. But you can't let that stop you. And I think also the whole point of this project is to use philosophy and ideas to deal with difficult and uncomfortable situations. So that's naturally what I'm going to lean into if things don't go how I envision them. But it doesn't really matter, because as long as I'm learning, that's one of the key things, and moving forward and progress that's what I want. So I feel that's an important part of it. And it's the more of the journey really than the end goal, I think. And it's ongoing.
Yeah, I agree. It's part of, I think when you're an author, people assume that you're the expert, and maybe you know a thing or two about the topic, otherwise you wouldn't be writing it, right? Yeah. But it comes from a student's perspective, that they're writing. Could be a subject that they want to know more knowledge about, or to do even better, or as in your case, like you said, solidify, hey, here's who I am. And once they go through this process of writing a book, it just takes that learning to another level, because you're thinking, you're writing, you're reflecting, and then solidifying it in a book for someone else to learn from some of your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's drilling down on everything, isn't it? You've got to be so solid on everything that you're writing, because it's you're presenting it to people. You need to know what you're talking about. You need to know exactly. You must have thought. I mean, so much effort has gone into this book. I'm sure when you write, you go over what you've written so many times, and you're so meticulous with how you go through everything. So it's not just something that's been thrown together. And that's what I love about reading. It's this, these projects, these books that people create, so much thought has gone into it. And there's the collaboration with others as well. And, when you're working with an editor and you get feedback, and with your publishing house and all these different people and ideas that you've been talking about. So it's really lovely to have it all come together in one concise thing that you can hold. That's a special moment. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, the advanced copy landed on my doorstep, and that was brilliant. Just holding that after years, that was a very special moment for me.
Oh yeah, and I love the cover. You have all kinds of. You've got 15 different symbols on here that I'm sure represent several of the different ways to do this. But why the number 43? 43 weird and wonderful ways.
That's what everyone asks. It's really about variety of challenge. There's no significance to the 43. It's just these were the most varied and unique challenges. I completed way more than 43, and I'm continuing to do challenges. It's just this gives a nice cross section of different things and ideas, really. So it just felt the right number. It was the right amount of challenges for the book.
Got it. Okay. And so give us an example of some of the weird ones?
So some of the weird ones. Okay, well, so they're broken down into three categories. There's physical challenges, skill-based challenges, and mental challenges. And they're all designed to push us out of our comfort zones in different ways. So the physical, you push your body, you push your mind. So there's loads of things in there: running races, obstacle course races, triathlons, and climbing mountains, and all of those very physical things. The skills are more about leaving your academic and intellectual comfort zones. So learning to solve a Rubik's Cube, and got into, this is a slightly bizarre one, lock picking, because that was a way to test myself. I get frustrated very easily, and learning to lock pick is dealing with that frustration. And bear in mind, when I'm doing all of these challenges, it's always about the philosophy and what's going on in my mind, the mindset. So that's why there's so many different challenges, because I can test out all the philosophy that I've been studying. And dealing with frustration is something that's particularly difficult for me. So when I'm folding a very intricate piece of origami, I have to really pay attention to what's going on inside. And the final category is the mental category. And so this is more about practicing discomfort. So some of the things would be a cold exposure, and a bizarre one is queuing unnecessarily, again, to work with frustration. So you join a big queue and you get to the end and then you walk away because there's no validation for that queuing. It becomes very difficult, and actually it becomes a philosophical exercise. And bivvying, sleeping in, so bivvy bag is this plastic shell that goes on the outside of a sleeping bag, and you can go and sleep in bizarre places and mountain summits and rivers and lakes. And again, that's quite difficult because you're paying attention to what your mind does when you're in the dark, in the middle of nowhere, and it's uncomfortable. So there's loads of different things like this, and it's designed to push you in different directions.
So give us an example. So talk to me about that particular challenge. So something about you can cover up your sleeping bag with this thing and sleep in, like, it sounds like maybe more hostile environments. Like you mentioned summit of a mountain or the middle of out in the wilderness, out in the middle of nowhere. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. So bivvying is just, you've got your sleeping bag, and then it's this hard protective shell that you put on the outside. So you're in a little cocoon, and it's waterproof. So you can go anywhere. And the idea is that you just sleep in loads of different places, on the beach, in the mountains, and you just get used to sleeping in uncomfortable situations, because that's not particularly comfortable, sleeping in a bag, you can imagine. But it's very adventurous activity, and it's quite amazing to push yourself like that. And that's just one particular challenge. The Stoics, one of the main philosophies that have inspired me to write this book, the Stoics of ancient Greece and Rome, they used to practice sleeping on the floor. They practiced discomfort. So they deliberately sleep on the floor because it was difficult.
And you said the top of a mountain. So you actually slept at the top of a mountain?
So I've slept all over the place in different, there's been some really interesting places. I think the funniest one for me was bivvying on a beach, and we settled into our bags. I was with my friends, and it didn't seem like it was going to be a particularly rough night because it was just a bit windy. But then after about 10 minutes, the bag started rustling, and then the rain suddenly started pattering, and then it just downpoured. It was brutal. And then we saw lightning and thunder, and we were just in the middle of these bags on this beach in Belgium. And that was a really crazy experience. And that was one of those things where you laugh hysterically because you can't believe you're in that situation. And especially compared to where I was before in my life, where I was in this dark place. So then find myself doing all these adventurous things, climbing mountains and sleeping on beaches in bags and queuing for no reason, and all of these different things just to test out these ideas and to see where I was after doing all of this. It's a massive contrast. So that's really the part of the journey, all of these different challenges.
And what were some of the things that you realized after you did something? And by the way, before I ask that question, what were a couple of the other maybe weirdest or hardest physical challenges that you've done?
So I'd never run a marathon before. So I signed up for a marathon, and that's hard. That's tough because it took me a long time to train for it. And then there's that, self-limiting belief. Am I actually going to be able to do this? It's a really difficult distance. So the first one I ever did, that was a huge moment, and it just gave me a real boost in confidence. And that was particularly important. I think that was near the start of the project, and that just gave me a real boost. I think the hardest physical challenge has been, I did a long distance walk in the Cotswolds, which is this just outside, kind of near London, about maybe 2 hours in the car. And it's very beautiful British countryside. And there's a walk called the Cotswold Way that's 100 miles, or it's 106 miles long. And you're supposed to do it in 10 days. But I decided to do it in 4 days, which was ambitious, maybe a bit stupid. But again, this was, I'd been studying all this philosophy. I wanted to push myself. I had all these ideas to test out. So I did it, and it was the most brutal thing I've done. I had got horrific blisters, and I gave myself mild Achilles tendonitis afterwards. And it's like walking a marathon every day with 1,000 meters of ascent. And it was raining the whole time. Typical British summertime rain. So that was an experience. But again, it was, I completed it, and it gave me a little boost. And that's what all of these challenges do. They're just there to boost you up a little bit each time you complete one.
Man, oh man, oh man. Did you sleep during that 4 days?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I went back to base camp, which was my parents' house. They live in the countryside quite close. So they were my support team, which is okay. So they would drop me off at the start of each day and then collect me when I finished a stage of the walk.
So the question I was going to ask a few minutes ago before I asked you to mention a few other things, what were some of the things that immediately came to mind? Because you talked about the discomfort of doing these things, but then this different mindset, perhaps like a reward of some sort, mental reward, physical reward for like, wow, I just did this and it was really difficult. And this is how I feel now. What was that feeling like?
I think it's just that boost in confidence that you get doing these things and challenging your limiting beliefs as well. And when you're in a place of a very anxious place, even just, so these are the challenges. These are a bit more extreme, some of the things that I've been doing. But when it first started, maybe the first 6 months before I began getting into these slightly more demanding challenges, there was 6 months of me building up to them, where even just walking from my apartment to the bench in the park, which was like 200 meters away, was a challenge. So that was really difficult for me. So to then find, fast forward a year and a half to then be doing slightly more, well, not slightly, but extremely more demanding challenges and putting myself in these unusual situations is huge progress for me. And that was, a huge boost in confidence, I think, when you start doing this and seeing that it's working. When I stopped having panic attacks, then I knew that this method of just diving outside of my comfort zone was working and was really making a difference in my life.
Is there anything you think you can't do now?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
and that's part of the journey, isn't it? Just chipping away, and there's loads of things I want to do that I haven't done yet. But it's this thing of leaning into our fears, which I think is particularly useful when you're trying to build resilience. Because, I talk about this in the book a little bit. The idea of some of these challenges will appear to be bucket list challenges, things that we want to do. So there's some skills that I learned. I've been learning Japanese because I always wanted to learn another language, and I've been learning to juggle and do all these different things. And these are bucket list skills. People want to do them, and by doing them, we can test our mindsets. But I love the idea of anti-bucket list challenges. And these are some other things that I've been doing. And it's where you counterintuitively lean into things that maybe scare you or that you don't want to do. So to give you an example, one of the challenges for me was to have acupuncture because I hate needles. I had a really big fear of needles. So to actually go and get needles put in your face and in between your toes and all over your body and your stomach, that's quite an extreme response to a fear. And that's a real anti-bucket list. But when there's something that we're afraid of or that we have a huge amount of mental resistance to, there's the potential for a lot of growth off the back of that. So that's why I love these anti-bucket list challenges. But there's lots of things like that that I've been doing as well. And that concept has been particularly interesting, I think, exploring these fears that I have. So yeah, there's lots more in the pipeline. So yeah, it's interesting.
So there's going to be a part 2, 43 more weird and wonderful challenges.
We'll see what's next. I've got loads of ideas about what the future is going to look like, and it's ongoing. So since I've written the book, there's been loads of other things that I've been up to. In the last couple of weeks, we've been in lockdown, so it's been harder to find challenges.
Sure.
Within our control. Of course, naturally, the purpose of all of this is to prepare ourselves for the chaos of life and adversity. We're all going to face adversity at some point in our lives. So I think the best insurance policy is to have some kind of system that we test out with all of these different challenges. That's what I've been doing anyway. So sometimes there's things outside of our control, like this lockdown situation. That's been a challenge. But I've been using this to my advantage and trying to continue to push myself. And I've been looking at ways I can do that with the restrictions. So a couple of weeks ago, I climbed Mount Everest on my stairs in my house. So that was up and down 2,137 times. And it took 21 hours. And I cut it over 8 days to complete it. And it was a ridiculous experience. But I could push myself with it. So I learned a lot.
That's unreal. Do you ever think you'll actually climb the real one?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of mountaineering. So there's lots of other mountains that I would rather climb than Everest. Things that, so I'm a climber and I do a bit of mountaineering as well. So that's been another way that I've been pushing myself. But yeah, when we're trapped inside, you have to be creative.
Yes, you do. And I got to give you props for that creativity, man. Like, I think anybody would forgive you, or anybody would tell you not to worry about it or take time off your challenges due to quarantine. Be like, nah, I'm going to climb Mount Everest on my stairs over 8 days. So good on you, man.
Well, thank you. It was a funny experience because I posted a few pictures on Instagram and loads of people were responding. Some people actually joined me and they did their own challenges in their own homes on their stairs, and loads of people were offering funny advice about things. What someone said, don't put a bag over your head with holes in it to simulate altitude.
Right. Smart idea.
I got offered support from an official Everest expedition company, which made me laugh. So there's been lots of that coming on, which has been really nice. So yeah, it's been fun. I've taken it further. I've done all these other things. So I ran a marathon in my garden the other week as well. My garden's really small though, so it's 8 meters long. So I can't even remember how many times. I think that was over 4,000 lengths of the garden.
Oh my gosh, man, that's
they didn't know what was going on. They came out, and actually it was really sweet. The kids next door, they made these signs and put them over the fence when I was running it. So, but it was supposed to be London Marathon Day. It was the day that the London Marathon was cancelled.
Right.
So loads of people around the country have been doing it, actually, running marathons on that day. So I wasn't the only one doing it, but it was quite a funny experience.
But you chose your garden, so which is good. Yeah. The cool thing that I've heard about, obviously, challenges are you get to meet yourself. And I'm sure you've gotten to meet yourself several times. You've gotten to meet different parts of you. You uncover more strength than you ever thought you could have. Have you had any challenges that you were just like, oh man, this was a bad idea, and I certainly don't know if I would ever do this again? Or maybe there were challenges that you didn't complete that you really wanted to complete?
There's been some mountaineering experiences where I've been so scared and really kind of came out of it just thinking, oh, that was ridiculous. maybe that, that's a stupid thing. But then you learn from it, and there were some big things that I took away from that particular situation, which really to do with altitude sickness. So as long as there's a lesson, it doesn't matter. I think that's the key take home with all of this. It's very much looking for what this is teaching me. And you're right, you do get to see another side of yourself. And when you push yourself, you get this self-exploration that I think has been so important for me, managing and dealing with my anxiety, learning more about who I am. And I think that just snowballs, and you get more confidence, and you do one little challenge and then it builds up and you start doing all these other ones. And I went from a very grey kind of fear-based existence to now I've got lots of colour in my life, and I try to live adventurously. So I think that's the journey, the arc of the journey, and who knows where it's going to go. I'll just keep pushing myself.
I love that. Have you ever heard of the term the drift?
No.
The wash, rinse, repeat?
No.
Okay. No, that's okay. I think it's safe to say that the majority of people live in what we call the drift. And the drift is not living intentionally, not challenging ourselves. It's like, hey, I get up, I have my cup of coffee, I go to work, I check my text messages, I check my email, I go home, I watch the news for a little bit, I go to bed, I get up, I do the same thing all over again. It's kind of called Monday looks like Tuesday, Tuesday looks like Wednesday, all the days sort of blend together because they're all very similar. And normally what we find is that men in particular, they aren't living their best life when that is their life. They're not challenging themselves. They're living very comfortably, right? Very almost on autopilot. But I think most men will tell you, this is not the life that I intended. This is not the life that I wanted. But at the same time, I feel a bit trapped, or I feel that the idea of doing something uncomfortable really scares me because I've been doing the same routine for so long. What advice do you have for men who are in that particular season of their life?
I think it's just going for it and just starting small and just trying to break up a routine and just trying to bring a little bit of adventure into life. And I think it starts small and then it builds up. You don't need to be extreme. I think just finding little pockets of time to challenge yourself and step outside your comfort zone can be really empowering, and it can bring so many interesting things into your life. And it doesn't really matter how that's going to be, because everyone has a different type of comfort zone. Everyone's comfort zone looks completely different. So I think it's finding these pockets of time that you can think about what you could do to challenge yourself. I always think the thing I always recommend is start small, start with something like a cold shower, go and have a cold shower. And that's difficult, and pay attention to what your mind is doing when you step into the cold. And I think you have a lot of fun with that. And it starts with something like that. And then, a couple of months you'll be having ice baths and, swearing at me.
Dominic, the guy who actually connected the two of us, he's a big cold shower guy. I think I did 90 days of cold showers because of him. And, but when you give us the advice of starting small, what else do you think that we can do? Because your book is kind of broken up into 3 different areas. You have physical challenges, and then I believe mental challenges.
Yeah.
And then what's the third one?
It's skills.
Could you give us an example? And you just did for the cold shower one, but could you give us a very simple example of the other 2 that seem to be pretty easily to implement to help give people momentum?
Okay, so let's go with the physical one. That's quite easy. I think having something in the calendar that you're working towards, a race, it doesn't matter whether it's a running race, cycling, triathlon, whatever. If you have something in the calendar that you can work towards, just signing up for that in itself. We were talking earlier about public accountability. When you've got something concrete that you're working towards, that's quite fun. And if you can bring friends in to do it with you, then you can start to have an adventure together, maybe some kind of crazy obstacle course, or even just if you're not a particularly active person, having a goal like a 5K in the calendar is great to work towards because it is pushing you to do something new and to try out something different, or even just trying a new sport. But having something concrete like that to work towards, I think, is particularly good for a physical challenge, for something to work towards.
I just want to comment there because I think this one will really hit home to men, because I think when dads in particular think about doing something like that, like, oh, it's a race, or I sign up for this or do that hard, I think they automatically assume that they have to do this event separately from their kids. And I'm a big believer. So I've got a 14-year-old, 12-year-old, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, all boys. And what I can tell you is we've done a lot of challenges as a family. We run races as a family. We do Tough Mudders as a family. My boys and I, each one of us separately, my two older ones, we climbed 14ers together. So we climbed Mount Quandary, which was 14,265 feet. We climbed Mount Bierstadt, which was 14,065 feet. Yesterday, it was Memorial Day here in the States. So I do what's called the Murph workout every single Memorial Day, which is run a mile, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squat, and then run another mile. And my 12-year-old, the night before the workout, he was like, what time are you guys doing that workout tomorrow? Because it was me and a couple of friends. I was like, I'm doing it at 9. And he's like, I think I want to challenge myself to do that with you. And I was like, dude, that's like one of the hardest workouts on the planet. I was like, I do that one maybe 4 times a year, but that's a hard workout. And he's like, yeah, I think I want to do it. And I'm like, there was a part of me that's like, wow, it's pretty extreme. And that's you're 12. But I was like, you know what? Who am I to tell you shouldn't do that or can't? I mean, he's done a lot of other things. And so we were doing the workout yesterday. He was up out of bed, met me and 2 other guys, 2 other grown men doing this workout. And halfway through the workout, I could tell he was getting smoked. He was getting really tired. At that point, he was up to 50 pull-ups. I was spotting him, but 50 pull-ups, he was cranking out the push-ups all by himself, cranking out the squats. He had already run a mile. And I looked at him and I was like, man, you've done a lot already. I was like, and I never want to give my kids an out, unless I feel like they might be endangering themselves or, like maybe pushing themselves unnecessarily. But I gave them an out. And I was like, if you want to throw in the towel, you've done a lot already. I was like, there's no shame in that. Although, if you want to continue, I encourage that, but, take your time with it. And he looked at me, he's like, I'm going to finish. He's like, no matter how long it takes, I'm going to finish. And that workout took us 1 hour and 26 minutes for him to finish, but he did it. And I could tell after he did that challenge that he had put a cookie in the cookie jar of resilience, like, I did that. Okay. I did that. And, we were talking about it as we were cooling down. He was like, he's a very humble kid. He's like, I feel like I've done a lot in just 12 years of my life. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, I wrote a book. He wrote a book. He's got a book on Amazon.
He's like, I see. That's amazing.
He actually wrote a book called Never Give Up No Matter What, which is funny because that's what he did during the workout, and he never gave up. And then he climbed the 14er with me. He's done Tough Mudders with me. And then he did this, and he's like, I feel like I've done quite a bit. And I was like, yeah, I would agree. I was like, you have. I was like, but I always remember, stay humble about that stuff and use that stuff to your advantage. In other words, like whenever you feel like life is getting hard, reflect upon these hard things that you've done and know that you can get through it. And he's like, yeah, you're right. But getting back to what I was saying is I think a lot of men think that they have to do some of these things separately. Like it's got to be a different world. And I think you can take kids along with you and experience things like this together. I mean, what cooler of a bonding experience than to do some of these things as a family? And I'm not saying you want to do some of these reckless things that's going to endanger like the life of your kid, but cranking the notches up a few notches, cranking it up a little bit on difficulty, knowing that things are hard, and you get through it as a team. Like, it adds resilience and adds experience and memories and bonding. So I think men need to be reminded that, hey, you can do these things with your kids. In fact, it probably isn't such a bad idea. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think the more the merrier. I always love the idea of doing things with community and with people, and all of the things the challenges I've done with other people have been so memorable. And you're right, you get this extra little bond from it. And I've always found that with my climbing partners as well. You go through certain situations which, when you're both really scared and in a dangerous situation, you can overcome that. Then there's a special bond. And I imagine it's going to be exactly the same with kids if you take them. And, this is a brilliant concept for children, because it's very easy for us to, even as adults, we like to stay within our comfort zones. And children are the same. I think if they see parents stepping outside of their comfort zones and pushing themselves, then that's contagious. And I think kids can emulate that behavior, and encouraging them to do that as well is such a great system for developing resilience. And as they get older, this is going to be something that's going to be really helpful for whatever they face. And I love what you were saying about the cookie jar. Yeah, every time you do something, it just gives you an extra thing that you can lean on, and that you've done something difficult in the past. So this all compounds, these ideas compound. And I think, community, doing it with families, and, there's no limits, really.
I agree. What advice do you have for men who are like, we're so busy. I'm too busy. I don't have time to do any of that. And as you think on that, I've always been a proponent of, hey, sign up to do this with your kid, or do that with your kid, or go on this trip and so many men will be like, yeah, but we have football, or, it's baseball season. We got practice. And I always say the same thing. I was like, dude, you will never remember what game you missed on the Saturday that you took off to go run a Tough Mudder with your kid. Like, you'll never remember that. You'll never remember if you would have won or lost or who it was, but you will remember the time that you guys crossed the finish line on that race. Like, that is like something you go to your deathbed and you're like, we did that. But people get caught up in busyness, and people get caught up in like, well, I can't jump out of my routine at all. Like, that seems crazy. What advice do you have around that?
So I think a lot of the challenges I did were early in the morning when no one was up. I get up so early, and this has been a great way for me to find time and make time to do stuff. And everyone just needs to look at their day and see how can they bring in, look at the pockets of time to find challenges. And maybe it's a commute on your way to work. You can use that time constructively, or rather than binge watching Netflix, you could use that time to go and do something with your family, or you could deliberately set challenges for the family to go out and, as you said, go and run a race, go and run a Tough Mudder together. Instead of that, routine, I think it's spicing it up and doing new and novel things. There's an amazing, one of my favorite writers, he's called Al Humphreys, and he talks about we work 9 till 5, but we've got 5 till 9 to have an adventure. We've got all of this time after work. So it's, how do we use that? How do we use that downtime when we're not working, and actually going and sleeping in a bivvy bag in the middle of nowhere? You can just still do that and go to work the next day.
True.
It's the novel experiences that are the things that stay with us. And I think that's something to think about. And, early mornings as well. That's for me, the way that I've managed to make more time for it, and prioritizing challenges and prioritizing the new and the novel, because that's where you're learning a lot. The learning curve is steep when you first start a new skill, or you start pushing yourself in a new direction. And I think it's great to be a beginner. I think it's great experiencing that resistance and whatever systems you have to deal with it, then you can lean on that when you're pushing yourself.
How early do you get up?
I get up at 5 every day, but then sometimes I'll get up at 4 for a run before I go to work as well. So it depends on the day as well.
And what do you do is this your full-time gig, just writing and blogging and that kind of thing? Or do you have a job on top of all this?
Yeah, so I am a guitar teacher. That's my main job. Monday to Friday, I'm in school every day. And then I write in the mornings and I write at the weekends and in the holidays. And that's where all of this project fills up all the rest of the time in my life. But yeah, my main career is teaching guitar.
I've got a Fender Stratocaster right there.
Oh, nice.
Right behind me. I just picked it up. I mean, so talk about challenging, right? I'm 45 and my kids, like one of them takes drums, the other one takes saxophone. And, you know, I guess they're big on challenging me because I challenge them. And one day we were coming home from their music lessons and they're like, Dad, like, haven't you ever thought about taking an instrument? And I was like, dude, I've always wanted to learn how to play guitar. And my 14-year-old goes, well, why don't you get off your phone and out of the waiting room where all the other parents are at and sign up? And I was like, challenge accepted. I'll do that. So I did that a few months ago and I've been learning, and it's hard. Like, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to learn. Like, learning Spanish was easier than trying to play this guitar. Like, I'm learning Tush by ZZ Top. And just moving my fingers from the G to the C, then to the D, and then back to the C. It's like, I'm like, wait, why don't my fingers move like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's hard. It is hard. It's, but then that's great again for your mind. If you're pushing yourself and struggling, I think as adults, we don't like to struggle. And as kids as well, we don't like to struggle, but we just kind of, we're told just keep going.
Right.
As adults, it's easy. We can just quit doing something if we don't like it. And that's why I think it's particularly good for us to lean into these types of challenges. And yeah, learning an instrument is a great one as well.
It is. It definitely opens. I feel like it creates these new neural pathways, they're always talking about with the brain. Cause it's always like, man, like I never really realized how uncoordinated I am, like when it comes to that, but it's been really, really cool. So as we wrap up here, what have we missed, or what are some things that we need to highlight that we haven't?
I think the only thing I'd say is all of these challenges for me have been a platform to test out the ideas that I've been studying. So I started reading a lot of Stoicism and Buddhism and growth mindset, and all of these things have been the philosophical ideas that I lean on when things are difficult, and the challenges allow me to practice them. So it doesn't matter whatever system you decide to use. Maybe you're someone who has faith in your life. Maybe you're someone who's more scientific and likes psychology, or maybe you're someone who has role models. But I think having a system to deal with adversity or any kind of difficulty that we're going to face in life, it's great to test it out. And I think challenges are the perfect way to do that. And that's what has made a huge difference for me. I had no tools and tricks in the first place. When I was hit with anxiety, I didn't have anything. So discovering these ideas was the first part of the project. And then the second part was testing these ideas out with these challenges. So it's a combination of these two things. And I think that's something that we can all have fun with. We can all explore. We've all got different values and different things that resonate with us. So I think it's discovering and just drilling down on that and being really concrete and saying, okay, these are the things that I use when life gets difficult. Now let's take them into a controlled environment and practice them. And that's where all of these fun challenges come into play. And I say fun, some of them can be really hard and demanding, and you can really test these ideas out. And that's the core concept of the whole project. And it's been about coming up with systems and then testing them in weird and wonderful ways.
I love it, man. The world needs more challenge and more resilience. And I like how you're living this life of challenge. And I like how you're living this life of discomfort, because I think that one of the most uncomfortable spots to be in is actually in a comfort zone. I mean, complacency will kill us, and at the end of our life, like, what do we want to say? Oh, I answered a lot of emails. Yeah, I responded to a ton of text messages and had a few people like my social media posts, but when it comes to really harnessing and living a fulfilled life and living a life where, you were uncomfortable and you truly lived it and you felt challenged and fulfilled after you did something big, I think that's huge. So thanks for the work you're doing, man. It's really good. It's really inspiring.
Oh, thank you. It's been fun, and it's a personal project. It's what I've been doing, and I've seen some great results within myself and the way that I've changed from who I used to be. And I'm still learning, I'm still moving. There's so much more to do, and there's always going to be things out there and ways to push ourselves. So I just hope that other people will be able to use these ideas. And I love the concept of everyone having different things that push them, and leaning into that, and we're all different. So it's playing around with it and just having fun.
Agreed. Well, just so everybody can find you and everything you're doing, where's the best place to find everything that you're doing?
So website, benaldridge.com. And that's got links to all my socials, got a blog, loads of pictures, tips on mental health and various things that I've been up to. I'm very active on Instagram as well. And that handle is Do Things That Challenge You. And that's a mix of a bit of philosophy and some pictures from various situations I've found myself in over the last, well, it's ongoing, but yeah, since the project began. So it's a real mix there. And it's been fun. It's been great having people to speak to. And the social media has been really fun for meeting other people, pushing themselves and, getting feedback. So those are the two places I'd recommend. Yeah. That's it.
Very cool. Well, gentlemen, you don't have to worry about memorizing those or finding those. You can find all of Ben's links at goodadproject.com/280 for this show. Super inspiring show. I've really enjoyed this. And you guys can find his book, How to Be Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable, 43 Weird and Wonderful Ways to Build a Strong, Resilient Mindset. We'll have a link for his book in the show notes as well. Gentlemen, go out and live on purpose, live with intention, challenge yourself, and live legendary. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun chatting to you.
You bet.